How do? My name is Andrew Hancock and I am a VMware technical architect from Yorkshire in the United Kingdom. I have worked with VMware since their birth in 1998. So that's been a quarter of a century now. I've been working with the VMware product catalogue. Some of my close friends say if you cut Andy in half, it reads VMware like a stick of rock from Blackpool Pleasure Beach. I have now written over 130 articles and recorded over 30 hours of VMware vSphere 7 and 8 videos for Experts Exchange, and received 40 Expert Exchange awards over the last 11 years working with the Expert Exchange community. I am currently the overall #1 point earner in the Hall of Fame. I am honoured to have been accepted into the VMware vExpert program since 2011, and I'm currently a VMware vExpert Pro for the last 4 years. And welcome back to another episode of Hancock's VMware Half Hour. Now, I'm not going to go on about that this is going to be 20 minutes or 30 minutes because you know the drill. It's probably going to be 30 minutes, and that's what VMware Hancock's Half Hour is all about. It's a half-hour discussion, me show you videos on VMware vSphere and the bits and pieces that are around them. So in the next 30 minutes, could be shorter than that today, I'm going to show you the VMware Skyline Health Diagnostics appliance, which is included free. Although my grandfather used to say that nothing is free in life, somebody is paying for it somewhere. But anyway, if you currently are on support and subscription and you have a VMware vSphere estate, there is no reason why you should not, in the next 20 minutes after you've watched this video, download the Skyline appliance, deploy it in your environment, register it with your vCenter server, sit back and let VMware hoover up the information from your environment and actually basically start suggesting some findings. It's a similar tool that was developed by VMware and it's arrived sort of kind of new on the scene. It's been around for the last 2 or 3 years. It's not as polished and doesn't give you as much information as Runecast that I basically did a video on last week, so I'll put that in the link to the description. I'm not going to show you how to deploy and configure the VMware Skyline Health Diagnostic Appliance because my colleague in Experts Exchange, Rodney Barnhard, fellow VMware vExpert, has already done a video last year, or the beginning of this year, it's almost last year, beginning of the year in January, on how to deploy and configure it. So all I'm going to say is follow his video, how you deploy and configure the Skyline Health Diagnostics appliance. Again, it's based on the Photon OS, like the majority of all appliances now that come out of the VMware shop. And again, there's not really any reason at all why you shouldn't be using it if you're on support and subscription. So I've deployed it in our VMware vSphere 8 lab. So let's just show you the proof. You can see that it's actually basically running there. Skyline Appliance 3.5. It's the latest OVF that I've just downloaded from VMware. It's installed, it's running, has an IP address that I can connect to. So I can just actually sort of kind of log in. Doesn't really show you a great deal actually, the appliance, to be honest with you, if you actually log in. But if you do log into the appliance, it will just show you that the collector is running and it's actually basically grabbing information from your vCenter server environment or all the other products that you can add into it as well. Now I'm just sort of kind of looking here that it's just giving me a little circle going round and round, and that doesn't look very okay. I'm just going to try logging in again. I was logged in previously and it obviously timed out. Okay, so that's really what I want to show you. Doesn't really show you a great deal. It does some basic diagnostics that we are connected into VMware's cloud. The collector is running. The endpoint, which is on vCenter server, is running, and it's basically monitoring changes, and it tells you that it's uploaded successful 23 minutes ago. Some extra information uploaded, and the VC host as well 20 minutes ago. Now my understanding is that information is uploaded to the VMware cloud. The VMware cloud does some number crunching and some magical AI on it, and then actually basically produces the findings for you. So I was quite surprised because this has only been running about 22 minutes. I'm just going to close Rodney's article, but I will put that in the description. And it was one of the reasons I actually wanted to do this today, because been busy today because a security announcement came out today from VMware about a particular severity that exists within VMware tools. And I'll put this in the description of the video as well. And it's actually advisory VMS SA 2023-0024. And again, it's a vulnerability that's been found in VMware tools. So that basically means that that vulnerability is going to exist in every single virtual machine that you have in your environment. It's recommended that you install VMware tools on your virtual machines, so therefore you are likely to have hundreds and hundreds of virtual machines in your environment that are affected by this particular vulnerability. However, don't start going into panic mode thinking that you've got to immediately start patching all your virtual machines, which could run into the thousands. Have a little look at the description, understand the attack vector, understand that, as it actually states here, that this particular vulnerability is only actually exposed if the malicious actor has been granted guest operator privileges and more privileges as guest alias. So that doesn't necessarily mean that, okay, yes, there is a vulnerability in VMware tools. Yes, it's important and you should update VMware tools as soon as possible at the next Microsoft patch cycle. Also, depending upon your organization's cybersecurity policy, depending upon what CVEs they expect to be patched and whether it's within 7 days or whether it's in 14 days, depending upon the actual value, whether it's 7.5 or 7.8. Some organizations have a cybersecurity policy that states that they expect all systems to be patched within 14 days if the severity is above a 7, and that changes. Of course, if it's above a 9, then 0-day vulnerability, they expect it to be fixed ASAP. So don't necessarily panic about this particular vulnerability that's come out, but I actually was keen to see how quickly this actually appears in the findings of Skyline. And I was also going to have a little crafty peek at Runecast and see how quickly it appears in Runecast. To access Skyline, that's accessing the appliance, which is obviously on-prem. To actually look at the findings, you need to log on to the cloud vmware.com, which is not to be confused with Customer Connect. But if you do go to vmware.com and you have a little look at the options that you can log into Customer Connect, and you can also basically log into VMware Cloud. When you log into VMware Cloud and you look at the services that you have for your organization, you can then launch the VMware Skyline Advisor service, which is what I'm going to do now. This drops you into the Skyline dashboard, and this information that's present here was collected about 25 minutes ago now, which is when I actually basically deployed the Skyline appliance. I'm going to leave it running overnight because I'm interested to see if it actually basically picks up this finding, which I don't think is actually here. And it also tells you there the last analysis is at 5 past 8, which is 25 minutes ago. So let's have a little look at, so it's a dashboard similar to what we saw in Runecast, and it's broken down into critical, moderate and trivial findings. And if we have a little look at the trivial findings, then it's actually showing us that the VMware tools that it's actually found at the moment. And if we actually click one of the findings, then it will actually basically show us that the object it's referring to, the virtual machine, is our Windows Server 2022 machine hosted on vCenter Server 8. And it's actually suggesting, gives you a helpful link, and it actually suggests, it's telling us that basically the version of VMware tools currently installed in Windows Server 2022 has a vulnerability, a denial of service vulnerability, and that's been mitigated in version 12.1.5. Now, if we actually basically just jump back to you can see that the latest version here now, VMware Tools, is 12.3.5, which resolves this particular issue. And just on that thought, you know, there are a few questions that come into Experts Exchange that talk about vulnerabilities, talk about patches, and all the patches that are issued. So for instance, 12.3.5 will include that particular fix there in 12.1.5. So the patches are cumulative. There have been some questions whether or not that people have got to apply 12.1.5 as a VMware Tools and then apply the next one. No, if you just apply the last version that came out, it will cover all those CVEs. And if we have a look again, there's another trivial one here again. Now it's actually basically listing, it's interesting here that it's also flagging that Runecast Analyzer, which is the appliance, remember, also recommending that we upgrade the VMware Tools. Now, you should never really upgrade the VMware Tools on the appliance unless you've actually discussed it with the vendor. Appliances should be treated as one whole item. Talk to the vendor if you need to update them. So again, another vulnerability addressed in VMware Tools 12.2.5. And that vulnerability actually exists in a lot more virtual machines. But what I'm hoping to see in the next 24 hours is whether or not that we actually start to see here that we get another vulnerability or another finding issued, and how VMware actually classes that. Do they class that as trivial, moderate, or critical? So at the moment here, we don't have any critical vulnerabilities in our environment. But if I have a little look at moderate, and this is actually basically going to find a lot more issues that we've currently got with our environment. Now, you may remember, if you've been watching this group of videos that I've done on our VMware vSphere 8 lab, you may have noticed on occasion, I'm not quite sure whether or not that it will, I'm just going to do a refresh. Every now and again, I see a warning, which is, I think is on ESXi number 2, that talks about, yeah, okay. So it is still there because I haven't actually basically removed it because I wanted to sort of kind of show you this. I did actually start a Skyline video over, in fact, the Skyline video that I started to do was actually in 2021. And I know specifically why it was in 2021. It was in September of 2021. And it was one of the last videos that I was actually doing at the end of the year, when I had Angus here, my ginger boy who was in the office, and he was messing around. But sadly, later in September that year, we lost Angus, and I've never really had the heart really to go back to those videos that were on the cutting room floor and edit them to upload them to Experts Exchange. So they've been left on the cutting room floor. I did promise that maybe one day I will get around to it, but it's still rather raw. But anyway, I left this particular host in an unpatched state so that it would actually flag this vulnerability. And it's obviously been flagged here, and it's being picked up in the Skyline Advisor here. And it's about the issues with the Intel processors and the you may remember the Spectra and the Meltdown, and then after we got the Spectra and the Meltdown, or do we have Meltdown and then Spectra? But anyway, Spectra, Meltdown, which were Intel CPU related issues, and then after that we had the L1 terminal fault as well, which is what it actually exists on that particular processor that I've not changed, because I actually wanted to show Skyline, and I actually wanted to show you some of the issues that it can pick up for you in your environment. If we sort of kind of go back and we have a little look at what other ones are moderate, so we've got remote logging. We know about that. That's not been fixed in this lab. It's telling us that we should enable DRS. It's telling us that we should use vSphere distributed switches. Assign static IP addresses. Use vSphere HA. Excuse me. Excuse me. It's also flagging here the removal of SD cards, USB as standalone boot devices, which of course we know all about and I've discussed many times. And these, I forgot to mention, I think in the last video I did, that we have micro SD cards in these two hosts here. And it is actually being used as a bit of a test bed, because the micro SD cards that we're using in these particular servers are actually industrial strength. I laugh because they were sold to us as industrial strength, because they're actually using some very other important, I'm trying to think here what to say, not to get myself really in trouble, but they're industrial strength micro SD cards that are used in the industry, and it's very important that they should never ever fail, and I think we'll just leave it there. So the fact that they're actually used in that environment, which is, I think, probably a lot more critical than my home lab, let's just say that. The fact that they're used in that absolutely 24/7, 365 critical environment, and that's how they're sold, based on mean time between failure and flash writes and duration, etc., etc. I thought it would be a good idea if I use them in our ESXi 8 lab, where VMware vendors, etc., now have turned around and said that we shouldn't actually basically use SD cards. But as I mentioned before, writing's on the wall about that. If you're in a production environment, please don't use SD cards and USB as a standalone boot device for your environment. You're going to learn the hard way when your server one day doesn't boot, and then basically you're going to have to basically start doing a reinstallation from scratch, or purchasing new hardware or additional hardware. So that's the interesting finding. So I'm actually going to do another. I'm going to do another video on Runecast, I think, and I'm going to do Runecast versus Skyline. That might cause some interesting discussions socially when I publish that one. But I'm keen to see really the information that's shown to us via Runecast and the information that's actually shown to us via Skyline. So what other options have we got here? ESX host does not have vMotion activated. Use the vMotion TCP stack for me. So we've actually basically got some findings that are best practices. We've got some findings that are backed up by VMware knowledge base evidence that should be changed. And I have seen in the past, using Skyline, that it can also basically find information about particular drivers that cause BSODs, in the same way that Runecast would do exactly the same thing as well. Let's have a look, see if we can find anything else interesting here. So, you know, we can dig down and we look at data centers, and we can look at clusters, etc. Like, this has only got 2 hosts in, so it's not particularly very big. At the moment, we've got 1 healthy collector, which is our vCenter server. We've got 2 hosts. We've got 9 virtual machines. As I said, this is a very, very small environment. So there isn't really a great deal actually basically going on here. But what I might do is I might actually just start going through and actually basically fixing some of these findings that it's found. Then I'm going to have a little look and see how long it actually basically takes for that new finding, that new VMware. When was it published? I think it was published yesterday, 26th of October. So it's not quite basically been pushed out yet, but it could be that it needs to ingest all the data overnight, and basically before that finding actually basically bobs up in Skyline. So a quick one, about 15 minutes. That's really all I actually wanted to show you, and really sort of kind of stress and get across to you really that if you are paying all the money for support and subscription, and you don't have Skyline in your environment, then get it deployed. You know, I see so many questions today where I've got administrators who are putting questions on Experts Exchange, and I'm giving them the benefit of my advice, and they're sort of kind of running away, and they're wanting to evidence that, and they're wanting to share that with management, and management are obviously pushing back and saying, oh well, okay, you know, who is this guy on Experts Exchange that you're getting this information from? So install Skyline. run the reports off from Skyline and put them in front of management and turn around and say, well, you know, we've got 10 moderate findings that the VMware Skyline Advisor Pro has found. I think maybe we should really actually basically fix these. The same with the critical updates. You know, if you've got any critical updates here, then they really do need to be addressed. Okay, trivial ones, as it says, they're trivial. They're probably not really going to affect performance. They're not going to affect your environment. But as I sort of kind of mentioned about Runecast, that it has the ability to scan your environment against a particular baseline. So in the UK, cyber security essentials is a big one that there are a lot of insurances that are tied into now. So you can actually basically audit your environment against the cybersecurity baseline, print out a report, put it in front of management, or staple it to your insurance and send it off to your insurance company, basically to come around and say, our VMware vSphere environment has been audited using the Runecast product, and here we go. You don't have any ability within Skyline at the moment to audit against any of the known benchmarks that are out there that exist. It is really just going to pick up findings that it's aware of from within the VMware knowledge base, or some best practices as well. But again, Skyline is free. As my grandfather used to say, nothing is free in life. Somebody is paying for it somewhere. And with that, I'm going to end tonight. Again, thank you very much for watching these videos. Again, if there's anything that you want me to do a video on, which is VMware related or related around VMware, then please let me know in the comments, and I will certainly do my best to have a little look at them and do something for you. So again, my thanks for watching. All the best and good night.